Dear students, today we are going to read A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, Chapter 7, The Marquis of Evremonde. Now, in this chapter, we will read about that Charles Darnay's uncle who was Marquis of Evremonde. A few weeks later, Charles Darnay went over to France. He went to visit his uncle. And who was his uncle? The Marquis of Evremonde. The Marquis was on his way home from a visit to the king. Now, this is all about Marquis, what kind of person he was. He was coming back home. He had gone to visit the king and he was very angry. And what is the reason for being angry? That the king would not listen to him and grant him a favor. He wanted a favor from the king, but it was not granted to him. That is why he is very angry. He encouraged his coachman, that carriage man who was driving his carriage, to drive out of Paris at a furious pace. Furious pace means very fast, great speed. The horses dashed. Dashed means they ran fast through the narrow streets, and the people rushed to get out of the way. Women screamed, they were shouting, men tried to pull children out of the coach's way, out of the carriage way, because the carriage was running very fast and the driver was not at all taking care of the people. Suddenly, the carriage stopped. There was a loud cry, and some men ran to stop the horses. The horses stood on their hind legs, means on their back legs, because they were running very fast, and plunged wildly. Plunged means leapt, means jumped wildly. What's the matter? Asked the Marquis, looking out of the window of the carriage. A tall man picked up a child from under the carriage. He knelt there, means he bent there with a child in his arms and howled loudly. Howled, he was crying because his child was dead. He was crushed under the carriage because the carriage was running very fast without taking care of the people those were around. Pardon, Marquis, said a ragged man. Ragged man means there was a poor man who was wearing torn clothes, and then he begged pardon from the Marquis because his carriage was stopped. It is his child. Whose child? The man who was crying over there. The tall man laid the child on a stone and ran towards the carriage. Dead, killed, he wept because he was the father of the child, so he started crying over there. Dead, he screamed, he shouted, and threw his arms above his head. He expressed his sorrow over his child's death. People crowded around the carriage. The Marquis looked at them with hatred as if they were rats. Because this is how the rich people behaved with the poor people in those days. The Marquis took out a gold coin and threw it at the tall man, who cried out again, dead. The Marquis, what did he do? How did he try to compensate? He just gave a gold coin. Just then, a strongly built man pushed his way forward. Then a strong man came forward. And who is this strong man? He is Mr. Defarge, who was a revolutionary. And he was also running a wine shop. He brave gasped, the father of the child, and then he tried to save Gaspard from the hatred of Marcus because he could kill him also. He said the child is better off dead. He did not feel any pain, and if he had lived, he would have known much more pain. Why? He would have known much more pain because he would have to live in poverty, and that was more difficult. In this picture, you can see the Marquis, and this is that Gaspard holding his dead child. The Marquis smiled. "You are a wise man." He praised Mr. Defarge. He said, "What's your name?" "Defarge." "What do you do?" "I sell wine." This was his business, Defarge's business. The Marquis threw a gold coin to Defarge. "Spend it like you please." He turned to the coachman. "The horses, are they all right?" He didn't bother about that child, but he bothered about the horses. And he asked the driver that were they all right. The Marquis leaned back comfortably in his carriage. He was ready to go now. The coachman drove off. Second form of drive. Suddenly, a gold coin came flying into the carriage, and one gold coin came flying into the carriage. And it is not clear that who threw it back, and there are guesses that it could be Mr. Defarge. "Stop!" cried the Marquis. Again, he was very angry over this reaction, and he asked, "Who threw that?" He looked outside the window. He could see only a mass of stony faces. Stony means feelingless, unfriendly, and mass is crowd. He could see only a crowd of unfriendly faces over there. Defarge was gone. The tall man was still crying over the dead child. "Dogs!" yelled the Marquis. He shouted and he called these poor men dogs. "If I knew who did that, I'll crush him under my wheels." "Drive on," he instructed that coachman. It was evening. The carriage went through the miserable streets of the city and then through several villages. Misery and starvation was seen everywhere. People were in miserable condition and they were dying with hunger. The Marquis had nearly reached his chateau. The chateau is a country house, you can say, or a mansion. When he ordered the coach to be stopped, he pointed out to a road maker. There was a man who was making road. Bring and said, "Bring that fellow." He instructed the coachman to bring that fellow, that road maker, to him. The man was brought. "I passed you on the road?" asked the Marquis. And then the roadmaker said, "Yes, sir," replied the man. "Why were you looking so hard at the carriage?" He was looking very carefully, and then Marquis asked him that, "Why were you looking so hard at the carriage?" And then the man replied, "I was looking at the man riding under the carriage." Means there was someone under the carriage. He said, "What man?" He was not of this part of the country. He said that he did not belong to this our region of the uh, to our region. "I have never seen him before. He was a stranger to him." "What was he like?" "He was all covered with dust, white as a ghost, and tall as a ghost." This caused a stir. Stir means kind of disturbance, but the Marquis did not show any feelings. He was a little bit afraid, but he did not reveal that. Instead, he called Gabel, the postmaster, to look out for the man, to search the man. The roadmaker was still standing there. The Marquis turned towards him and asked, "Did the ghost run away when we came down the hill?" "Yes, sir. He ran down the hillside when the coach slowed down." "Be sure to find him, Gabel." The coach rattled. Rattle means it made a continuous rattling sound away to the castle of the Marquis. Now he started going to his house, a castle, mansion. "My nephew has arrived from England." "Not yet," replied the servants. The Marquis asked the servants, and that reply was, "Not yet." The Marquis was having his meals when the sound of the wheels was heard. His nephew, and who is nephew, Charles Darnley, had arrived, and in a little while came into the room. In England, he was known as Charles Darnley. The Marquis greeted him, he wished him, he welcomed him. "You have been a long time coming." "No, I'm direct from London." "I mean, a long time thinking of the journey." "I was held up with various businesses." This is a reply by Darnley. When they were alone, Darnay said, "Our family has done great wrongs to the common people. He was a kind person, and this was revealed to him by his mother that his uncle, Marquis, and Darnay's father, both of them, they were twins and they had done great wrongs to the common people. And Darnay wanted to do something good for these poor people. I wish I could do something to make up for them. Much wrong was done in my father's time. You were his twin brother. My father is dead. When my mother was trying, she begged me to help the people who had suffered at the hands of our family. My dear nephew, you are foolish. Okay, this was a remark made by Marquis. He called his nephew foolish. I'll die as I have lived up till now. He said that I will not do anything for the poor people. When I inherit the property, inherit means when I'll get the property, replied Darnay, I'll give it to the poor. What will you live on then? How would you spend your life? This is a question asked by his uncle Marquis. I'll work. I'll live in England. You like England? There is a French doctor there. Remember who is this French doctor? Dr. Manet, Lucy's father. You know him? Yes, replied Darnay. He has a daughter? Yes. You are tired, nephew. Go to bed. Good night. In the morning, a servant came into the Marquis' room. He screamed, he shouted. A knife had been thrust deep into the Marquis's heart, and around it was a paper on which it was written, Drive him first to his tomb. This from Jack. And who did this? Who killed him? Gabal. Okay, that father of the child. The day before the Marquis had run over a child, the child's father had followed him home. He was a tall man who was hidden under the carriage in the middle of the night. He had climbed through the window. He had killed the Marquis. After his uncle's death, Charles Darnay went back to England and became a teacher of French. This was how he was living his life there. He was working as a teacher of French. He was a constant visitor of the Manets, means he used to go to Dr. Manet and Lucy Manet. A year went by, a year passed, and he grew more and more in love with Lucy. One day, when Lucy had gone out with Miss Pross is a caretaker of Miss Lucy, Charles visited Dr. Manet. The doctor greeted Darnay and said, Charles, I'm glad to see you. Sydney Carton and Mr. Stryver were there. Who is Stryver? That senior lawyer, and Carton, assistant of Stryver. They, Dr. Manet said that they were also here. They have just left. Dr. Manet said, Darnay, I have come to tell you something. It is about Lucy. Dr. Manet looked worried. Then he said, Yes, go on. Dear Dr. Manet, said Charles Darnay, I love Lucy dearly. I love her more than anything else in the world. I would like to marry her. Have you ever said this? Anything? Have you said anything about this to Lucy? This is the question asked by Dr. Manet. He said that did you reveal this thing to Lucy? And then Darnay said that no. Thank you, said Dr. Manet. He looked very sad. I would not take her away from you, said Darnay. We could all live together. Dr. Who are we here? Dr. Manet, Lucy Manet, and Charles Darnay. Dr. Manet looked up. Does Lucy love you? I don't know. I only hope she does. Is there anyone else? Anyone else? He's talking. He's trying to ask them, is there anyone uh, whom Dr. Manet thinks that maybe he loves Lucy? Anyone who would like to marry Lucy? Yes. And who are there in the list? Well, Mr. Carton and Mr. Stryver are here sometimes. It could be one of them. Is there something you wish me to do for you? Only this, said Charles. If Lucy tells you that she loves me, do not say anything against me. I promise I won't, replied Dr. Manette, even if something happened many years ago. Now, what is this thing? Even if something happened many years ago, actually, something had happened many years ago. Remember, Dr. Manette was in the prison for 18 years, and he was in the prison for 18 years because of Darnay's father and that Marquis. Okay, his uncle and his father. They both were the reason um, uh, behind Dr. Manette's imprisonment. Never mind, you have my word. You have my word. A word means I promise you. Darnay did not understand what the doctor was talking about because he did not know anything what had happened years ago. He held out his hand. Thank you, he said. The doctor did not say anything. He was thinking about Lucy. She means everything to me, he said. He was still holding Charles' hand. Charles noticed that the doctor's hand had become very cold because he was nervous. He did not want her daughter to marry in those Marquis family. He didn't like them, but because of his daughter's happiness only, he would agree. I have to tell you something else, said Charles. Now Charles wants to reveal his identity to Dr. Manette. Darnay is not my real name. I want to tell what is my real name and why I am in England. Stop, cried Dr. Manette. No, I must tell you. I must not have any secrets from you. Don't tell me now, pleaded means requested Dr. Manette. Tell me after you and Lucy are married. Good night. I promise. I will tell you after I marry Lucy. Good night, Dr. Manette. This was the promise made by Charles Darnay. Okay. Thank you.